All right, wanted to do my second video as the counter argument versus Federalist number 10, and that would be another required document, and that is Brutus number 1. So, what I'm going to do is I will do the same thing as before, kind of talk about it with my notes here, and then I'll post this to the website, these notes to the website that you can go ahead and access them at any time. Also, want to let you know that I'm going to post Brutus 1 questions. I think I outlined 3 questions on the AP Classroom website. So make sure that we're going to take a look at that. So, all right. So if Federalist number 10 was all about factions and why they're dangerous, and more importantly, how a republic could cure the problems of a faction, well, then Brutus is going to be that counter argument. Okay. So if the Federalist papers are telling you why the Constitution is good, this is going to argue otherwise and come from an anti Federalist point of view. Now, ultimately, the way that it opens up is it talks about they know that the Articles of Confederation were not good. They get it, all right? They also discuss that they understand that the Constitution is an attempt to fix all the failures of the AOC. But, as we move forward in time looking at this document, how will the Constitution be judged? Will it be revered as this wonderful piece of literature that we look back on and thank the Lord that we were given this, or are we going to despise it? Is it going to take away liberty and so on as well? Now, before we even begin, a large part of this document, Brutus 1, is all about these new powers that are invested in the federal government. All right, now, if you take a look at this graph, and I'll give you an opportunity to take a look at it more than I discuss it. So take a look at it, but you'll see that there's more power. All right, so in the AOC, there's no executive branch. There's now an executive branch with a single executive. Okay? Where the judicial branch, there's no federal system. Now there is a federal system with a Supreme Court. Um, in regards to the legislative process, it's not a unicameral Congress where each state gets one vote. Now we have two bicameral Congress, two houses, where one's based on population, one's equality, and so on as well. But there's a couple other things that are alarming that we're going to kind of discuss a little bit later here. This power over states and individuals, that's specifically citing the supremacy clause, whereas the clause in the Constitution that says, okay, the protocol or chain of command, if you will, for laws is the Constitution up top, federal government second, states third, and local is last. And it's pretty much a chain of command like any kind of company. And notice who's on top, the Constitution and the federal government. Now, as far as the other one, the raising of the army, the power to raise an army, kind of eye-opening for people back then. Most are associate standing armies with bad things used by monarchs to do various nefarious deeds, if you will. And so that's not a good situation for anti-federalists either. This power to tax, we'll talk about it. When does it stop? Who's paying taxes? On very vague terms in the Constitution as well. They're going to control interstate trade, and there's some other key points that are going to be identified. So let's get to the gist of it. This idea of power. Now, the one thing that Brutus says, and I've heard it time and time again, even in my lifetime, is, hey, listen, you got to cherish liberty, all right? Because once you relinquish it, you're never going to get it back, all right? So if you give up, like, freedom of speech, you're going to notice that governments are not going to be ready and willing to give that back at a moment's notice. So beware of the powers that you give up, because the tradition is that you never get them back. Now, in regards to power structure of this new constitution between the federal government and the states, it's not close. The federal government does have a lot more powers than the states, and even Brutus number 1 later goes on to argue that all the important powers are given to the federal government. So you're going to have that fear of Big Brother, right? This big imposing government, strong-willed government. And Brutus 1 says, okay, all these powers are given to the federal government. Now, what's going to be the role of the state governments, okay? Are they going to have enough power given to them to actually be able to function? Or is the federal government going to dominate all facets of our life? And so then they go to pinpoint specific powers that are worrisome. For example, this necessary and proper clause, okay, aka the elastic clause. Now, that basically says that the government, that's language inserted into the Constitution that says, okay, From time to time, in order for Congress to carry out all these enumerated powers cited in Article 1, it's going to be necessary and proper that we add on more responsibilities or add on additional powers for us to do that. What Brutus is going to discuss, and it's a very valid point, is okay, when does that stop? All right, what powers don't you or could you not have underneath this necessary and proper clause? Because to us, it seems like it gives you the ticket to do anything you want, and that's very alarming to us. And we talked about above this supremacy clause, that people that cherish states' rights, all right, like an anti-federalist, all right, cherish states' rights. Notice that they're number 3 on the protocol. Constitution's 1, federal government's 2. Here they are, states number 3, and then the local governments, what they're part of as well, is 4. So they're on the bottom looking up in this situation. And taxation, here we go. Well, taxation, we get it. It was a problem in the Articles of Confederation, but you're citing you're citing language like provide for the common defense and general welfare. Well, what does that mean? Provide for the common defense. Does it mean that we need standing armies during peacetime? Do we need to set up bases all across America and on the coast to protect ourselves? What does it mean? And where's that money going to come from? From us, taxation? And this idea of promoting the general welfare, okay, what does that mean too? You know, general welfare, promoting general welfare can mean a lot of things. I mean, building schools, building roads, even today, like airports, things that can make our lives better for the entire country as is. But what does it mean? When does it stop? All right? And once again, we talked about this before. Standing armies, the tradition of them in England are not good. All right? Once again, they're used by kings for various reasons, usually not good. And so this idea that this new Congress or new government, excuse me, could create these standing armies that are in peacetime are very worrisome because the past tradition has always been bad for these people. Now, the federal court system, once again, as I told you throughout the year, they were worried that the federal court system would override the state courts. That the state courts would make these decisions, people in the states, would serve on these courts, make decisions, only to see the federal government say, like, no, don't like that. We're going to override that and so on as well. So they're nervous about that, this federal court system. Are they going to continually override these decisions that the states makes? And ultimately, just the general theme it's talking about is, like, it's fearful. Brutus 1 is fearful of an increase in power will lead to a need for more power. That the federal government is not going to stop until it gets all the power and the states have none. And so there's this great quote that was discussed when I was in college, and more importantly, when Barack Obama was running for president. It's talking about power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely, which means kind of like, whenever a person has power over other people, it usually sometimes doesn't end up very well. It can make him or her corrupt, and it morally destroys their nature. So you've got to keep a close watch on the people that have the power. They always have to be suspect, if you will. And does this new Constitution do that? They're not saying that. Last but not least, a couple other things, and then we'll finish this up. This idea of a large republic, that we elect one representative to represent the will of thousands of people. Well, the issue that Brutus number 1 has is, will these elected representatives, if you will they really represent the will of their constituents? Or are they going to be so far removed from the people, they're not even going to know what they want? All right? So today, one House member traditionally represents, 750,000 people. We'll call that the low number right there. Well, can that one representative know the general will or ideas or thoughts and cares about the 750,000 constituents? That's a good question. Can they? All right? And if they don't, are they so far removed that they go off to Washington, D.C. and just do what they want or do what their party wants? I mean, this should be a government for the people, by the people, and will it be? Will the large republic destroy that? And then what they also say, too, is, hey, Brutus says, let's get something straight here. High-profile offices will have the tendency to recruit sneaky, ambitious men who are likely to abuse their power, all right? That when you have government offices and there's this lure of, hey, power that is attached to it, the power to make laws, if you will, or bureaucratic rules, whatever, it's going to lure people that are prone to liking to have power. And what Brutus is saying is that's who you don't want. You've got 10 people and nine people are power crazy or power hungry, you want to pick the one that's not. And what this government will do is it will choose those 9 people, which is not good. So, concluding sentences, these are some of the reasons by which it appears that a free republic cannot long subsist over a country of the great extent of these states. If then this new constitution is calculated to consolidate the 13 states into one, as it evidently is, it not ought to be adopted. So, final point, all of these powers that we have discussed in Brutus number 1 and all of these issues that we're discussing right here, they outweigh the good of this Constitution. So we are advising you, states, to vote no. We think that'd be in your best interest. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up right there. Don't forget, go to AP Classroom and check out the questions I have for Brutus 1. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care.